We're going to get right into this clip, guys. Former Treasury Secretary Summers, tariffs could cost the U.S. $6 trillion, devastating on the global economy. Makes really good points here, guys. Just back and forth with China and the U.S. Doesn't look like it's going to stop. Nobody's giving in. Let's get into this clip,
This
guys.
is dangerous work with a sledgehammer on a pretty sensitive machine, which is the global economy that's having really serious consequences. First,
Jeez.
it's important to understand that there's more tariffs that are around than you described. Even after the big back off, there's a 10% across the board tariff, a
Mm-hmm.
range of structural tariffs like on steel and automobiles, and a range of new tariff threats like on pharmaceuticals. Here's a kind of market based estimate of what the damage that the market thinks this is all doing to the US economy is. Markets down, let's take today's number, 9%. If that's right, that would be about $4 trillion.
Wow.
Of course, at $4 trillion since Liberation Day, of course, markets were down coming into Liberation Day because of some anticipation of these policies. So let's be conservative and say these policies have taken $6 trillion off the stock market. Now, the stock market only measures the adverse impact on corporate profits, not the adverse impact on workers, not the adverse impact on consumers. So you
Right.
need to add to that stock market number.
Yeah, man. Great point. And also, he talks about how that the world gets if the world gets riskier, the bonds go down in yield and the currency goes up in value, and the dollar
On
almost
to
becomes like a safe haven for the global economy. Let's get into this clip as well
seeing
here.
what's true, which is three things. This is an inflation shock because you're adding to prices. CEO of Amazon got it right. The Secretary of the Treasury got it wrong. Increases in tariffs of this magnitude, the overwhelming part of them will be passed on to consumers. So you've got an inflation shock. When you raise the prices of people and their income, at least in the short run, is the same, they're poorer. And that means they can afford less stuff. And that pushes the economy down. And so you've got higher inflation and you've got more less demand and therefore more unemployment. And all of that's bad for the economy and companies. And the last thing, which I think is profoundly important, is we are trading like an emerging market country right now. For serious countries, for the United States, the pattern is that when the world gets riskier, the bonds go down in yield and the currency goes up in value because people come for the safe haven.
Man, so he's saying we're trading like an emerging market, and when the world gets riskier, usually people depend on us, the dollar, and our consumerism. Um, and we're doing the opposite by Trump insisting on putting these tariffs on China and all these other countries. By the way, China's not backing down. They've been making some bold claims, man. They said that they're ready to go all the way with it, even if it becomes a full blown war. I mean, they're conducting military drills and all that shit near Taiwan, guys. So China's not backing down, and the key now is like if it keeps going and they keep increasing on each other, it's really about whose economy worsens and who's willing, who gives up to the pressure, that this is causing. Because obviously, with China, we know that they're famous for like slave labor and they rule by an iron fist. Places like the U.S., you start seeing violence increase. You see robberies. You see people rioting when the economy's down. You see unemployment. You see more, crime and bullshit in general, man. So, it really, It depends on who's going to give in to the pressure. And Xi Jinping is not picking up that phone to talk to Trump. He doesn't give a fuck, right? He's the next day he's doubling the tariff that he's, so this back and forth could be really dangerous. If no one ends up like stopping this from happening, because a lot of people are going to be suffering economically, the consumers, obviously, the regular folks, right? So um so yeah, and I agree with him. We should sit with these adversaries and negotiate with them, guys. you know but then again, if Trump pulls like this wild plan that he has, and China gives in, and they're like, all right, let's negotiate better terms, we're good, right? Then he looks like looks like he's doing the right thing. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. That's a W for Trump, right? But if China has the same attitude, it's gonna get worse on us than it is on China. It's gonna get bad in China, but trust me, we won't hear about it, but we're gonna hear about it here for sure.